Week 8 of the 2021 college football season is now over, and today, as we head into Week 9, I'll be giving you guys my updated college football rankings for this 2021 college football season. And looking back at Week 8, we did not see any major top 25 matchups or matchups that would have any direct implications on the college football playoff. However, we did see some big upset bids. Oklahoma, of course, was down to Kansas 10-0 at halftime. Who would have seen that coming? Kansas controlled Oklahoma for that first half, and the Sooners did wake up in the second half, but that could have been one of the biggest upsets in college football history. And we also saw Cincinnati, of course. I mean, they were close to losing to Navy, a 1-5 Navy team. So obviously, I mean, this was a crazy week of college football once again, even if we didn't see any major ranked matchups. Oklahoma State, of course, fell to Iowa State. That was a big upset. Illinois, of course, upsetting Penn State in 9 overtimes. I mean, if you told me that we'd see a 9 overtime game on Saturday, honestly, I'd probably believe you, just because of how unexpected and how unpredictable of a season this 2021 season has been. But that being said, I'm sure November is going to be no different, and we are headed into the final weekend of October. So that being said, let's get into Week 9. My updated rankings will be starting off with 1 through 7. Georgia, no surprise, had a bye week last week. They're 7-0 and easily the #1 team in the country. I mean, right now, everything has been super unpredictable other than Georgia. I mean, Georgia so far has been the one main dominant team, and they're the one team that you would say is safe right now in the top 4 as we head into the final month of action before the college football playoff and, of course, the conference championships. But yeah, Georgia, that's a very good football team, and I would not be surprised a single bit. I mean, they're more than likely going to win a national championship game this season, but of course, that's unless this team gets super injured all of a sudden or something crazy happens. But Ohio State jumps up 3 positions to number 2 this week after beating Indiana 54-7, and Indiana, it's just been a struggle of a season for them. It's been unfortunate seeing where that team is at right now. I mean, Indiana, many people expected them to be one of the contenders in the Big Ten East, which they should have been with the amount of talent that team has, especially after an excellent 2020 season for them. But, I mean, it's just been a tough season for the Hoosiers, and Ohio State took advantage of it. 54-7 was the final score, and Ohio State does have a loss on the board. They lost to Oregon back in Week 2, but this is a totally different Ohio State team. I've said this the past couple of weeks. Buckeyes are totally different in comparison to Week 2. They have improved drastically offensively and even defensively. I mean, this is a very good football team. And Ohio State, this is a football team that is, I would say, the number 2 team in the country right now. These rankings are based off of how I think the teams are right now. And Ohio State is better than Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Alabama as of right now. At the beginning of the season, Ohio State wasn't even a top 10 team, especially when they lost to Oregon. They just did not look very good, and CJ Stroud was pretty underwhelming. But since then, I mean, Week 4 onward, this team has looked very good, and Ohio State is very deserving of being in the top 2, I do believe, after their dominant win over Indiana. And, I mean, that team, that's a tough offense, and defensively, they're only getting better. So, yeah, watch out for the Buckeyes. That is a very good football team, and I think that they will be the main favorites for me to once again win the Big Ten. Oklahoma is my number 3 after almost losing to Kansas, but they won 35-23. And many people are saying Oklahoma shouldn't even be in the top 5 right now. I disagree with that. I think Oklahoma, I mean, they looked horrendous in that first half. I was watching the majority of that game just because, I mean, it would have been insane to see Kansas get the win there. But Oklahoma, that is a very talented football team. And they, if you ask me, they were just sleeping into that Kansas game. They were not ready to go. Mentally, they were not prepared. And quite honestly, if Oklahoma was playing, say, Oklahoma State or Texas or a good team like that, well, obviously, I mean, Oklahoma, they've started kind of slow for several games this season, and they've come back and won their games, and that's all that matters. I mean, Oklahoma's 8-0, and they've had several close games and come back in most of them. But Oklahoma, that's a football team that if you give them a really good football team, if they were to play a team in the top 15, I mean, they would have been much more prepared going into that game. I mean, Kansas, they just went sleepwalking into that matchup, and in the second half, you could see Oklahoma finally found some life back, and I mean, Caleb Williams, he's an excellent quarterback, and quite honestly, I mean, Caleb Williams and Oklahoma, that's also a very dangerous football team, and I think until the Sooners take a loss, they are deserving of being in the top 4. I mean, that was a close win against Kansas, and Kansas is the laughingstock of the Power 5, to be honest. But Oklahoma, that is a very good football team, and quite honestly, I think they're still deserving of being in the top 3, even if it was a close game, just because of how much talent they have. Cincinnati is my number 4. They're moving down 1 after their win against Navy, 27-20. I mean, Navy, that is a very bad football team. In Cincinnati, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Bearcats can hold steady because, I mean, this is a football team that is walking on thin ice. I mean, even if they take one loss, they're out of the college football playoffs. So there's a lot of pressure on the Bearcats right now, and it'll be very interesting to see how they handle that as we head into the final month of action. But as of right now, Bearcats are a lock to get into the college football playoff. They control their own destiny. I mean, they should be top 4 unless they take a loss. Alabama is number 5. They beat Tennessee 52-24. Starting to find their stride again. Alabama is looking very good. Of course, they took a loss to Texas A&M a few weeks ago, and Texas A&M has really found their stride as well. I mean, the Aggies are a very good football team, and I actually have them ranked pretty highly. We'll get to them in a bit, but Alabama's my number 5. That was a good win over a pretty good Tennessee football team. I mean, Tennessee isn't very good, but I mean, they've got enough talent for me to say, like, yeah, that's a good football team, and Alabama dominated that game 52-24. It was close for a while there. Tennessee was hanging around until the fourth quarter, and Alabama just ran away with it in the second half. But yeah, Alabama's 7-1, and that's also a football team that I could definitely still see in the top 4 come December. Michigan is my number 6. They're moving down 2 positions. Nothing against them. I mean, it was a good win against Northwestern. They're 7-0, still undefeated. But right now, it came down to this: if Alabama and Michigan played each other, who would win? And same thing for like Michigan, Oklahoma, Michigan, Cincinnati, Michigan, Ohio State. And quite honestly, all the teams ahead of Michigan right now, I do believe would beat them. So Michigan, I mean, I had them number 4 last week, but after Ohio State dominated and Alabama looked really good against Tennessee, especially in that final part of that game, I think Alabama and Ohio State especially are better than Michigan right now, but we'll find out. When Michigan plays Michigan State next week, I mean, we'll find which team is real out of those two. And Ohio State also plays Michigan here in a few weeks. So, I mean, we'll find out in the end which Big Ten East team is really the main college football playoff contender. And, I mean, I tell you what, Michigan State, that's going to be a fun game in East Lansing coming up this weekend here. Spartans, speaking of which, are my number 7. They remain in the same position during their bye week. They're 7-0, still undefeated. And so, obviously, yeah, Michigan State, both teams are 7-0. And certainly are very good football teams there. And I'll be giving you guys my prediction maybe tonight or tomorrow, Monday. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the preview will be they'll probably be the first preview that I give to you guys for week number 9. Moving on to 8 through 14 here. Ole Miss is my number 8. They beat LSU there 31-17. Solid win. LSU, I mean, that's a struggling football team, but Rebels overall looked pretty good, and they're moving up 2 positions after that win there into number 8, and they're 6-1. Oregon beat UCLA there 34-31. Good win for the Ducks, and they still have, I mean, if a lot of upsets happen in the top 8 over the next few weeks as we head closer to the end of the season and Oregon wins the Pac-12, I mean, potentially, who knows? We could see Oregon still be close to cracking the top 4. I mean, it's going to be very tough for a one-loss Pac-12 team to get into the college football playoff, but if upsets continue to ensue as they are, I mean, Oregon definitely has got a chance to make a run for it, so they just got to keep winning their games, and I mean, that's a good football team right there as well, so I wouldn't be too surprised. But yeah, the Ducks, I mean, they gotta play well week in, week out. We saw them have a scare a couple of weeks ago against California. Notre Dame controlled USC 31-16 last night, and they're moving up 2 positions after that win. They are 6-1. Kentucky is number 11. They had a bye week, but they're moving up 2 positions during their bye week to number 11, and they're 6-1 as well. Texas A&M is my number 12. They have looked excellent the past few weeks, and they're the best 2-loss team in the country right now, beating South Carolina 44-14. Great win there. I think they held South Carolina like 4 yards for the first 2 or 3 quarters. There was some random stat. It was crazy. But yeah, Texas A&M, that's a very good football team right now. They're moving up 3 positions after that win, and they're 6-2. So a 2-loss team is in the top 12 right now. That's pretty insane to see only at the end of October. I mean, sometimes you'll see a couple of 2-loss teams in the top 15 in November, but this is only the second to last weekend in October. We're seeing a 2-loss team, I believe, in the top 12 for me at least. But yeah, that's a good football team. Watch out for them. Iowa's my number 13. They had a bye week, of course, coming off of that loss to Purdue of all teams, and Purdue did not look very good this weekend against Wisconsin. So that turns out it was a pretty terrible loss for Iowa. I mean, if you're wanting to be in the college football playoff, you can't choke the teams like Purdue. But yeah, they're 6-1. It'll be very interesting to see how they do. I think they play Wisconsin this weekend, so that's a test. Badgers are a pretty good football team, and they're pretty sneaky, even though they're outside of the top 25 right now. Wake Forest is number 14. They're still undefeated. They beat Army 70-56. That's like a basketball score in football. I mean, 70 points scored by Wake Forest there. Defensively, I mean, 56 points allowed to Army. I mean, that's obviously not very good, but yeah, Wake Forest, that's a decent football team. Offensively, I'm starting to gain more confidence in them, and I think Wake Forest, I mean, Yeah, they might be the best team in the ACC now that NC State has lost. I mean, I believe NC State was the best team in the conference until they lost this past weekend. So Wake Forest, they're in a pole position to make it to New Year's Six bowl game as of right now. On to 15 through 21, Auburn's my number 15. They had a bye week. They're moving up 4, and they're at 5-2. Oklahoma State lost to Iowa State 21-24. Tough loss for the Cowboys. I mean, Oklahoma State was undefeated heading into that game, coming off of like 4 straight quality wins. So obviously tough loss there for the Cowboys, but Iowa State, solid win for them. That really boosts their resume as we head into the later parts of October here. Baylor, they had a bye week, but they're 6-1, moving up 3 positions after that. And I still have Oklahoma State ahead of Baylor because the Cowboys did beat Baylor earlier on in the season. So I'm keeping them 1 step ahead of Baylor right now. Pittsburgh is number 18. That is a good ACC football team. I mean, Pittsburgh or Wake Forest definitely looks like one of those teams will win the ACC this season. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Pitt. I mean, they've played very well over the past few weeks. They beat Clemson 27-17. They're moving up 3, and they are 6-1. Penn State moves down 11 after their loss to Illinois in 9 overtimes. One of the craziest games that I can remember, and I think we'll all remember that one if you were watching that game for a long time. I mean, I'm sure most Penn State and Illinois fans will remember that game for the rest of their lifetimes. I mean, it was a crazy game, 9 overtimes. Illinois got the win by 2, which was, I mean, it was insane. Penn State just can't take a loss like that, so they're moving down 11, and now they're 5-2. They lost Iowa a few weeks back, and they just did not look good at all in that Illinois game. I mean, I don't know what happened, but Penn State, man, just a bad game for them. Iowa State is my number 20. They beat Oklahoma State there 24-21. Big upset win. They are back in the rankings at 5-2. San Diego State is my 21, beating Air Force 20-14. Air Force is a good football team. So, yeah, Aztecs, solid win for them. They are 7-0, still undefeated. One of the better, I'd say, group of 5 conference teams as of right now. And they're moving up 1 position after that win to Wake Forest, or to Air Force. On to 22 through 25, SMU comes in at 22. Good win against Tulane, 55-26. And SMU, the Mustangs, are definitely a big dark horse right now in the American Athletic. I mean, they're looking pretty good, and that's going to be a very interesting football game when they face off against Cincinnati here in a few weeks. UTSA finally enters my rankings. I've gained enough confidence in them to put them in my top 25. They beat Louisiana Tech 45-16. It was a road game, solid win for UTSA, and the Runners are 8-0 and number 23. I mean, UTSA, that just shows, I mean, how crazy of a season this is. Seeing UTSA in the rankings, it's pretty insane. But yeah, that's a good football team. They're 8-0 and still undefeated. And Oregon State is my number 24. You guys may consider Oregon State to definitely not be deserving of a top 25 position, but solid win against Utah, 42-34, and they're entering the rankings this weekend at 24. And of course, I mean, they've taken 2 losses, and they're a 2-loss Pac-12 team, but I don't really want to put NC State or Coastal Carolina ahead of them right now. I think Oregon State is, I mean, that's actually a pretty good football team. They've got plenty of potential moving forward into November here. And first 5 out, NC State is 26, Arizona State's 27, Arkansas 28, Florida 29, and Virginia is number 30. Virginia, watch out for them. That's a very good football team as well. Florida and Arkansas, of course, both have 3 losses, so they're kind of on standby for now. If they keep winning, they should get back into the top 25 eventually. But yeah, also Coastal Carolina, can't forget about them. They lost to Appalachian State. They're 27-30. Just a tough loss for them. I mean, they're 6-1 now. I mean, that's just one bad game for them. And obviously being a group of 5 team, that's going to drop you dramatically after taking a loss like that to Appalachian State. So yeah, overall, Coastal Carolina, I still have them in the top 25, but just barely. Dropped out. NC State was number 16. Honestly, you could switch NC State and Coastal Carolina at 25. Either of those teams could easily go in at 25, but and of course you got Purdue at 24. I had them at 24 last week, but obviously that Iowa game was just one really good game for the Boilermakers because they lost big to Wisconsin this past weekend. And then, of course, Utah was 25, but they lost to Oregon State. So Oregon State kind of gets their position up there at 24. But that being said, they're up set up for today for my college football rankings for week 9. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on these rankings, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.